Welcome to Orchestrating Impact, stories from the heart of New Jersey Symphony. I'm your host, Jamara Wakefield. In this transformative podcast, we dive into the profound intersection of music and community connections, delving deep into the heart of the New Jersey Symphony's mission. Join me on a captivating journey as we unravel the untold stories of those whose lives have been touched by the symphony's work. Joining me is Juan Narvas, a gifted flutist who found his passion for the instrument at a very young age. He'll share how his global travels have shaped his musical journey and how the New Jersey Symphony fostered not only his deep appreciation for music, but also the power of community shaping his life in profound ways. As you listen to Juan Carlos's inspiring journey with the New Jersey Symphony, you'll discover the incredible opportunities that await young musicians just like you. If you're a young musician between the ages of 8 and 17 who dreams of playing exciting music in a welcoming environment, the New Jersey Symphony Youth Orchestra offers a vibrant, supportive community where you can take your love for music to new heights. Learn more and take the first step at njsymphony.org/youth orchestras. Now my conversation with Juan Narvas. Juan Carlos, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Talk to me about your upbringing and your earliest connections to music.
Yeah, my very first connection to music was in the 5th grade. I was new to a school. All the other students who were in the band program had already had a year of experience. So I was a little later. But I remember walking into the band room and just hearing that sound, that like glorious to me, to my untrained ear sound. And I remember thinking, oh, I definitely have to do this. This is where I have to be. So that's kind of the spark that I always feel and I try to remember kind of moving forward.
And how did that aspiration fit into your family life and growing up and in your neighborhood?
Yeah, I mean, in my family, I am the only person who has gone into a creative field. I'm one of the only people to go to college and move forward in higher education. It was especially difficult to tell my family I want to go into music as a career because I grew up in more of a low-income community, and it just wasn't really heard of. But once I think my family saw the passion that I had and how much time and effort I was putting into it, they jumped on board. They started hearing me more. They really started to be with me on that journey.
So why the flute?
It's really strange because I called my lifelong partner. But I chose it because my mom said, "Oh, play the flute."
Oh, wow. Okay.
I didn't know what the flute was. See, honestly, after I started playing it, she called it the violin for years. Sometimes she still calls it the violin. So I'm not sure she knew what the flute was, but something about it just kind of stuck with me and it's been with me.
And tell me about those early memories of holding it and playing it and discovering it.
One of my favorite memories as I was learning the flute was my band director at the time. She would take the new students out of class to give a flute lesson or an instrumental lesson. In my case, it was me and one other new student who were starting the flute. And it was like my very first lesson and my very first experience getting one-on-one time with my instrument. And I remember holding it and then looking at my fingers and making sure they were right and then going back and then having to play a different note and then having to look at it again. So now that I'm teaching people and they're starting the flute, I see them do that and I'm reminded that I was there at one point too. And it's kind of like a full circle moment.
I love that. I want to hear more about teaching. And I would love to hear your thoughts on your experience at the symphony and how it led you to that path.
Absolutely. Teaching, I discovered, is one of the things that has really guided me. I've always had this sense of wanting to pay it forward, pay what my teachers have given me forward to others. Uh, Specifically, I remember in the symphony, in the youth orchestra program, we had Andy Lammy, who's a clarinet player in the New Jersey Symphony, that he would just mentor everybody, even if we weren't in the clarinet section. It was very much like a woodwind sectional. He'd give a lot of advice. He recorded me playing the piccolo in a concert once and sent it to Bart Feller. And I remember that encouragement and that guidance, and even just reminding me to listen back and remember to be in tune with the clarinets was very meaningful. And those were some of the first times that I really aspired to be like that uh, when I was a professional.
And so, what is it like to be with your students now?
It's really exciting. Right now, I'm working with students that are starting the flute, and I'm starting my journey as a teacher, as a private teacher, after finishing my postgraduate degrees. And it's kind of astounding to see the breakthrough moment in a young student and see how they really approach their instrument like a game. They're literally playing the flute. And I recently had this moment with one of my students where she was learning how to articulate, and she got one really, really, really good articulation on the flute. And it was the first time she ever did it. And I like almost screamed and like jumped out of my skin. I was just like, wow, you really did that. I just started teaching you, and you're so quick and you're so eager. So I felt like a spectator in that, even though I was teaching her.
It's so beautiful to be a witness as someone's learning something new. Take us back to your breakthrough moments when you were at the New Jersey Symphony. There must have been so many, but maybe one that stands out for you.
Definitely a huge breakthrough moment was we were always giving challenging repertoire. So we were playing Holst's The Planet Suite, and I remember struggling so much on the Jupiter movement that I just had never encountered that level of technical demand. And I remember just not being able to get it and being really frustrated and maybe wanting to deliver. And it really forced me to like rethink how I approach the instrument and how I practice. And it was always very encouraging because once I did make a breakthrough and I was like, okay, well, I can play this now. I was always given that, I was always fed back what I had just done so I could feel proud of it. I remember Jeff Grogan was the director at the time, and he would always give a compliment sandwich when he was trying to give you a critique. So he would say, you sounded really lovely. Your tone is very beautiful. And then some critique, let's try listening back or staying in time with the rest of or look up at me, for example. And then he'd end with another compliment about, whatever he was hearing. And I remember that really stuck out to me because I never felt like I was being judged, or I was really like encouraged to grow. And I really appreciated that when I was younger.
I love that. I feel like the world would be a better place if we all received compliment sandwiches, right? Balanced and fair and affirming, but, sober and accurate. I love that. Talk to me about what you remember in terms of the community that you were a part of during that time in your life.
That was one of my favorite parts because I was one of the only students in my school who was looking at music in such depth. And I really longed for a community to share that with. I had my private teacher and some other of her students, but that wasn't like a frequent meeting. And I had some friends, but at the New Jersey Symphony, we would break in the middle of rehearsal and go downstairs and eat bagels. And we would all talk about what we were all doing, how lessons were going, talk about things that didn't even have to do with music. And I felt like I was somewhere where I was able to be understood and I can relate to these people. And I made friends that I still stay in contact to this day. And I like to keep up with them, even if they haven't gone into music. just because those connections, it's like really bonding to make music with people, especially people your age.
Sure. And I imagine you reproduce that community feel and experience in your own classrooms now because you remember how profound it was for you.
Absolutely. I think music is an experience that is not meant to be kept to yourself. So community is really sewn into the fabric of what we do. So as a teacher, I really love to bring that to a group setting. And that's kind of one of the reasons that I work with uh, instrumentalists outside of flutists with chamber music and bring that together because that's another experience that's really bonding.
Tell me about your travels. I know you've done some traveling.
Yeah, after my undergrad, I was inspired by my teacher who had won a Fulbright to Germany, and she had encouraged me to look into studying abroad. Um, so I did. I kind of put all my eggs in that basket, and I traveled to Spain to start my first master's program, and I studied in Madrid for that year. And when that was coming to a close, I had had a lot of experience traveling throughout Europe for musical experiences. I went to Vienna. I got to hear the Vienna Philharmonic rehearse, um,
Wow.
which was life changing. I kind of sobbed in the back of the hall while I was hearing them play Scheherazade. Uh, I traveled to Paris to see the Paris Conservatory, to Lyon, and I had all these experiences and I just couldn't let go of the time I had there. So I said, let me do another year. Let me do another master's program. And I moved to Barcelona and I started studying with Vicence Prat, who's the principal flutist of the Paris Philharmonic. And that's when I really felt a lot of things click. My love for travel and my love for music were really going hand in hand. And I was able to travel with my flute, with my lifelong partner, and get all these musical experiences that I'm really holding dear to me.
Travel is so important, right? It expands our experiences, our minds, our networks, and just gives us a different worldview. So I love that. Can you tell me, you said that you were sobbing in the back of the hall. Can you tell me about that, the visceral experience that orchestral music does for you? What does it do for you in your heart, in your body, in your mind when you're listening or playing?
It's that spark that I described when I first heard the band play. And of course, when I was young, that sound wasn't maybe the most refined, but it's the same thing in principle. It's hearing communication in a way that you wouldn't expect. It's kind of this sense of group flow. Like we're all doing the same thing, or I'm hearing everybody do the same thing and including me as an audience member or letting an audience member in. And it's this kind of feeling of being a piece of a puzzle. And I think that's what's the most enticing thing to me about orchestral playing and ensemble playing in general. It's that it's the sum of all the parts, not each part individually.
Can you describe the impact that this music has had on your worldview?
I think seeing the various ways that people make music and how different perspectives can come together to create something has made me a more understanding person, not just as a musician, but as a whole, because there's a certain openness that you have to be a good musician. We're always encouraged to listen around us, to give an idea and be receptive to other ideas and respond. And I think that's something I really tried to take into my worldview of communicating everything I have and being receptive. And for me, music is all about communication, and it's taught me a lot about how to do that in other contexts. And yeah, I would say that that really is the most impactful thing to my worldview.
A composition or a piece of music that you were introduced to while you were at the New Jersey Symphony that you still think about today?
Yeah, It's actually funny you mentioned that because I was just thinking about that earlier. And there's this composition called Dusk by Dana Wilson. And it stands out to me because it was the first time I had played first flute on anything in an orchestra setting. So I got a little taste of being principal flute and being kind of a protagonist because the flute had this low, mellow melody. And I remember how exhilarating, how scared I was to play it, especially when it was concert time. And it was the first taste of that pressure that I started to kind of get a little bit addicted to that performing always brings. So I would say that's definitely a piece that always comes to mind.
Juan Carlos, it sounds to me like classical music and the flute and your love for music and passion for learning and being surrounded by music has taken you all around the world, from New Jersey to Spain to Vienna, back home, and now you're teaching and inspiring others. What advice would you give to young musicians who are just beginning their journey, or perhaps to young people who are even considering a musical instrument?
Find a good teacher that understands you, and aside from that, also listen to as much music as you can. I think one thing I wish I had done, aside from getting a teacher earlier, is I wish I had really trained my ear to appreciate so much of like the vast musical culture that was available to me, whether that's listening to opera from any period or the major symphonies. I would say really get that sound in your ear, because that has been the most valuable thing that I have been able to train and that I still continue to train, is really not just loving that sound, but knowing it really well.
One thing that you said that really resonated with me was that you are the first person in your family to play an instrument, to pick up an instrument, to study music. And I think that is such an important detail to underline. And it's been beautiful talking to you and feeling that passion that is flowing from you. And this conversation has felt like music. And I'm just so excited for you as you continue to play and audition. And I'm so thankful that your students have you to support them as they bloom and grow and thrive in music. And just thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you. I really enjoyed speaking with you today as well.
Are you, or do you know, a young instrumental musician between the ages of 8 and 17? Curious about or already love playing symphonic music? Eager to connect with your peers in a fun, nurturing environment where you're encouraged to go beyond what you thought was possible? Check out the New Jersey Symphony Youth Orchestra. For more information, go to njsymphony.org/youth orchestras. Orchestrating Impact, Stories from the Heart of New Jersey Symphony was produced by New Jersey Symphony and ABF Creative. The New Jersey Symphony team includes Marshall Jones-Kumaha, Greta Polsky, and Jeff Anderson. The team from ABF includes Wanda Reynolds, Anthony Frazier, Mike Biseglia, Rondell Patterson, and Misty Avenger. Video lead by Justin Lear. I'm Jamar Wakefield. Thank you for watching and listening.